Hello, everyone. I'm Billy.
And I'm Kamraun. Welcome to the HorseFrog podcast, home of your two favorite professional digressors and the creators of the Malazan Brotherhood.
And today we'll be discussing Book 3, Chapter 18 of Memories of Ice, a novel in the Malazan Books of the Fallen. This is part 1 of our coverage of this chapter.
This podcast series is intended to be a companion to reading or listening to the books set in the Malazan universe. It's not a book review, and it is most definitely not a replacement to reading the books. Both Billy and I know this to be the best fantasy story ever written and want to share our love of the series with you.
Now, we will be covering the events of the books in a linear fashion, and there will be spoilers for those that have not read the books. And we'll try not to spoil anything prior to us covering that portion of the respective book.
A quick warning, today's episode contains adult topics / extreme violence, and thus is not suitable for children.
Is it? I can't remember.
Is it ever suitable for children?
Yeah, I don't think it is. I guess it's just not. Just to throw that in there. Our show is listener supported. If you'd like to support us, we'd really appreciate that. And you can do so by visiting our Patreon link on our website at HorseFrogProductions.com. Currently, we're posting ad-free episodes on Patreon weekly.
Also, we'd really like to hear from you. And we really mean that.
Yes.
Send any feedback or comments to contact@HorseFrogProductions.com. We had a couple comments come in on the podcast chat this week. I can't respond directly to these, so I have to respond on the podcast itself. Gruntle has contacted us, and he says, It's not clear to me on how Gruntle became Trake's mortal sword. Nightchill seems to have knowledge of this, and I suspect Cruel set this up. It would be interesting to get the timelines of Fëanor's descent and Trake's ascendancy. And I think we've kind of lined those up in the last couple of weeks where it makes sense when it happens.
Yes.
And we tie that back to Deadhouse Gates. Now, in terms of how he was selected to become Trake's mortal sword, I don't think that's ever made clear. How they chose him or when exactly it happened, whether it was before he left Darujhistan or somewhere along the way, unclear.
Yeah, it's unclear, but I'm just going to make a huge leap myself on this. I'm just going to have to assume it has to do something at the juncture when they were assaulted and Harlow was killed by the K'chain Shamal, and they were in that sleep that Karuli had put them in or did something to help them out there. I'm assuming it was sometime there. That's my assumption, because that was something mystical and something was going on there that I don't think we were privy to too much of what was going on there other than Karuli had protected them somehow.
Didn't Trake also die somewhere around there?
Yes, because it talks about if I'm not mistaken, I thought that there was, somebody mentions like the death cry of Trake in that mass council meeting, but why does Wrath Trake look so happy?
Yeah.
Because I'm assuming that it takes some kind of physical, like, do you have to sacrifice yourself physically to ascend?
There are ascendants that are still alive.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking too. So, I don't want to say too much either, because this chapter, good golly, it spells out a bunch of stuff. So
it does, yeah.
So we'll cross that bridge when we get to it, but some of this stuff will be answered, I think, in this chapter.
Yeah, some more detail will come in. Also, Gruntle mentioned that he thinks Calor hates Silver Fox with a vengeance because he knows Nightchill is in there. This he fears above all. And he asked what we think. I agree with that. That is a ages-old rivalry.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah. There's a lot of bitter blood under that bridge. So, yeah, I agree wholeheartedly, Gruntle.
Yeah. Well, thanks for reaching out to us, Gruntle. If you want us to respond via email, contact@horsefrogproductions.com.
Yep.
We cannot respond when people message us through our podcast platform. Just a heads up to everybody.
Yep. Thank y'all. And thank you, by the way, Gruntle. Thank you.
Always appreciate hearing from you. All right, Chapter 18, Part 1. The chapter begins with an excerpt. Quote, "The birth of Barghast gods rang like a hammer on the anvil of the pantheon. Primordial in their aspect, these ascended spirits emerged from the hold of the beast, that most ancient of realms from the long-lost elder deck. Possessors of secrets and mysteries born in the bestial shadow of humanity, theirs was a power wreathed in antiquity. Indeed, the other gods must have felt the tremor of their rising, rearing their heads in alarm and consternation. One of their own, after all, had just been abandoned in the mortal realm, whilst a first hero assumed the warrior mantle in his place. More, the fallen one had returned to the game in dire malice, corrupting the Warrens to announce his deadly desire for vengeance and, it must be said, in clear-eyed retrospect, domination. Burned sleep was fevered. Human civilization floundered in countless lands, drowning in the mire of spilled blood. These were dark times, and it was a darkness that seemed to be made for the dawn of the Barghast gods." End quote. And this was from In the Ware of Dreams, by Imrigan Talobant the Younger.
Nice.
That name sounds familiar. I think we've read some stuff from Imrigan before.
I'm not sure if it was from the younger, though. I know we've read some from Taliban, so it could be, could be like a Pliny the Elder and Pliny the Younger situation. We may have heard from Imrigan Taliban, but maybe not the younger.
Have to go look that up.
Yes.
See if that's true.
There could be an Imrigan Taliban the even younger.
The third.
Well, as Blackadder would say, it's Imrigan Taliban the glint in the milkman's eye.
Oh. This detail regarding the gods emerging from the hold of the beast stuck out to me. I'm reminded of the scene when Perrin went into that tile when inside the Azath house and saw the hut that held the throne. We now know who likely built and lived in that house.
Yeah, agreed. I like this. It's finally, some of this stuff is finally starting to fall into place a little bit, and I appreciate that.
Also, it sounds like the other gods don't take kindly to people gaining the same power as them.
We don't take kindly to those that don't take kindly around these parts.
You know that's coming.
Yeah, I baited that. I expected that exact response. Well done, sir.
Thank you.
We go to Quick Ben. His eyes opened to see, squatting atop a backpack directly in front of him, a small figure of wrapped sticks and knotted twine, its head an acorn, that now cocked slightly to one side. Talamandus said, "Awake, yes, a mind once more sound." Quick Ben grimaced and said, "Talamandus, for a moment there, I thought I was reliving a particularly unpleasant nightmare. I'm going to take a moment to be thankful that we've come back to these two.
Yes.
I really do love both of them as characters, and their conversations are generally very entertaining."
Agreed. You and I are just such Quick Ben fans in general. I'm always glad to get back to one of the people that we know. We know this fella. I know him.
Yeah, Quick Ben alone is cool enough, but Talamandus is really a great addition. The way they play off of each other is beautiful.
It's fantastic, dude.
Talamandus said, "By your ravings these past few days and nights, Ben Adafon Dalat, you've lived through more than a few unpleasant nightmares, yes?" Quick Ben pushed the furs from his body and slowly sat up. He found he was wearing little more than his thin wool undergarments. Leather armor and quilted tunic had been removed. He was sweat-chilled, the grubby, coarse wool damp. He asked, "Ravings?" Talamandus's laugh was soft. He said, "Oh yes, and I listened indeed. So, you know the cause of the illness besetting the sleeping goddess. You would set yourself in the cripple god's path, match his wits if not his power, and defeat all he seeks. Mortal, yours is a surpassing conceit, which I cannot but applaud." Quick Ben sighed, scanning the tent. He said, mockingly no doubt, "Where are the rest of my clothes?" Talamandus said, "I do not mock you, wizard. Indeed, I am humbled by the depth of your integrity. To find such in a common soldier, one serving a malevolent, spiteful empress who sits on a blood-stained throne, ruling an empire of murderers." Quick Ben interrupted, "Now hold on, you misbegotten puppet." Talamandus laughed and said, "Oh, but it has always been so, has it not? Within the rotting corpse hide diamonds, pure of heart and stalwart with honor, yet besieged within their own house by the foulest of masters. And when the historians are done, the ink drying, may the house shine and sparkle even as it burns." Quick Ben muttered, "You've lost me, runt. How long have I been out?" I love how Quick Ben calls this ancient being a runt. It shows something of his comfort level with them, doesn't it?
Absolutely. You know, Ben is one of those guys that just seems to relate to everyone, anytime, anywhere. It doesn't matter who you are. Ancients, immortals, grunts in the field. I mean, he knows them all. He's like Ferris Bueller.
He treats them like they're on the same level.
Yeah.
Or maybe even that he's a little bit above them. Talamandus said, "Long enough. With the city retaken, the thrall yielding the bones of our founders, and the panions driven into the maw of Brood and your Malazan kin, well, you have missed most of the fun. For the moment, in any case. The tale's far from done, after all." Quick Ben found his quilted tunic and pulled it on. He muttered, "All of that would have been nice to witness, but given my present lack of efficacy." Talamandus said, "Ah, as to that." Quick Ben glanced at Talamandus and said, "Go on." Talamandus continued, "You would best the crippled god, yet you find yourself unable to use the powers you possess. How, then, will you manage?" Quick Ben reached for his leggings and said, "I'll think of something, eventually." "Of course you think you have an answer for me, don't you?" Talamandus said, "I do." Quick Ben said, "Well, let's hear it then." Talamandus said, "My gods are awakened, wizard, nose in the air, gleaning the scent of things, given to troubled thought and dour contemplation. You, Ben Adafon Dalat, pursue a worthy course, sufficiently bold to snare their regard, leading to certain conclusions. Sacrifices must be made, to your cause, into the warrens, a necessary step. Thus, the need to supply you with suitable armor, so that you may be fended from the cripple god's poisons.
I have a question about a certain word. I've heard it pronounced two ways. We're talking about the word doer or dower. I know the English say doer.
Okay.
I know that for a fact because I was watching this show the other day and this woman goes, dower. She says, no, you mean doer. This is on a television show.
Let's see what Google says.
Yes. Let's check in,
please.
please.
Google says doer.
It is doer.
Oh!
Ooh, wow. I don't know how I felt. I've always said
I hate
dower.
English.
I hate English because I've always said
hate
dower.
English.
Yes. I've always said
dower.
Sour. It's four.
How is anybody supposed to learn this language if you have these convoluted rules?
Listen, sour, dower, because sour in particular. Sour is the closest.
Yes.
Our, sour, dower. Four doesn't fit there. Four is weird because it's also an or versus.
Okay.
Yes, the language. Dude, the language is hateful, dude. The language is hateful. I speak it and I still struggle with it.
I'm not going to correct it.
No. Make it so. Let's Americanize this son of a gun.
Sadly,
I'm sorry, Mr. Erikson.
I'm probably going to have to say it correctly from now on. I think I'm going to put this in the bucket of normality and normalcy.
Yes.
Where I was used to saying normalcy, which isn't technically incorrect.
No.
But normality was
more
the
correct.
Proper way. Yes.
It's like, but doer is actually, and this makes me mad because I've known it, it's Americanized. I've always heard it dower. And I'm sorry, Mr. Erikson, but I'm going to stick with my American cousins down here in the South and say dower.
Don't be stubborn.
Okay.
It just bothers me.
Yes, it does.
You can't figure it out based off of the other things that you've learned. That's all.
Yes. Yes, the past lessons do not inform the future use of a word in our language. It's like, dude, it's like, what's up with that? It's like...
Thank you for bringing that up, though.
Oh, you're welcome, sir.
Quick Ben massaged his brow. He said, Talamandus, if you and your gods have sewn together some kind of impervious cloak or baldric or something, just say so, please. And that's an interesting concept. I can think of one example of similar ascendant blessed protective armor that appears in the E&C Usselmont books.
Oh.
We've seen surprisingly few enchanted items in the series thus far.
Well, you know what's so weird? The only other one that comes to mind, of course, is Chance, the sword that was Ganoes's parents' sword from Gardens of the Moon. And
yes,
that weird investiture in this world is a two-way street, which, it seemed like the blessing ties the person doing the blessing to it. In Chance's case, it seemed to be that way. Usually, from my understanding, I say this, like I have some great understanding, but investiture, and the great joy of that is that it takes it off whoever does that kind of empowering out of the hands of whoever. It's like it's just kind of always what it is, unless somebody can remove it. And I mean, that's how I've always understood it to be, but this world is different, so I don't know.
Now that we're talking about Chance, I thought of Dragnapur. I don't really consider that an enchanted weapon.
I don't know what that is, man.
I always considered it something else, given there's a warren attached to it.
Yeah. Well, see, I've told you, like in the world of the Moorcock world, that there are these sword demons. A Stormbringer, in fact, the eternal champion Elric wields, drains souls. But in the world it is from, it is a world where that is the form that these entities take as a sword. I don't know if it's just what they appear like in our realm, or it's such a weird thing. Nothing like I think of in the past, yeah. It's its own thing, man. Well done.
Yeah. I'm thinking of a couple others that might qualify for this. They're all spoilery, so I'm not going to get into them right now.
Yeah. The only thing I can go back is an idea in Gardens of the Moon where we got the Torques. We got Picker's Torques.
Yeah. Those are invested. Yeah. Okay.
But you've got it's hinted at when Crocus is in his thieving days early on. It's hinted at, yeah, well, it's not just the coin, but something about when looking for things, looking for magic things, he was told to look for mundane-looking items as opposed to looking for something fancy.
Oh, okay. I guess the Talani mass weapons,
that's true.
Now that I'm thinking of it.
The Talani mass.
Those are sorcerously invested.
Yeah.
So maybe there's more than I initially thought about when we really start laying them all out like that. Impervious cloak or something, it just feels like we haven't seen a ton of that type of thing. It's just been sprinkled here and there, maybe mostly weapons, it seems like.
Weapons seem to be the primary, the Flint universe of the Talan peoples.
Yeah, you don't have the +1 intellect cloak.
Dude, those guys,
around.
But the Talani mass, that seems to function in my normal realm of understanding. It's kind of unbreakable, +1 through +4, maybe some Vorpal action in there. with their investitures, but that I understand. The other things we've seen are very esoteric. Well, it's all esoteric. That's kind of what Mr. Erikson, I think, is going for. You know what? Work it out yourself.
Talamanda said, "Nothing so bland, wizard. No, your flesh itself must be immune to infection. Your mind must be implacable to fevers and other similar plagues. You must be imbued with protective powers that by nature defy all that the crippled god attempts when he seeks to thwart you." Quick Ben said, "Talamandus, what you describe is impossible." Talamandus said, "Precisely! Thus, before you, stands the worthy sacrifice. Twigs and twine do not sicken. A soul that has known death cannot be made fevered. The protective powers binding me are ancient and vast, the highest of sorceries to trap me within myself." Quick Ben said, "Yet you were taken, once before, torn from your barrow." Talamandus said, "By necromancers, rot their foul hearts. There shall be no repetition. My gods have seen to that, with the power of their own blood. I shall accompany you, Ben Adafon Dalat, into the warrens. I am your shield. Use me. Take me where you will." Quick Ben's eyes narrowed as he studied Talamandus. He said, "I don't walk straight paths, Talamandus, and no matter how little sense my actions may make to you, I won't waste time with explanations." Talamandus said, "My gods have given their trust in you, mortal." Quick Ben asked, "Why?" Talamandus said, "Because they like you." Quick Ben exclaimed, "Hood's breath! What have I been raving about?" Talamandus said, "I cannot in truth tell you why they trust you, wizard, only that they do. Such matters are not for me to question. In your fevered state, you revealed the way your mind works. You wove a net, a web, yet even I could not discern all the links, the connected threads. Your grasp of causality surpasses my intellect, Ben Adafon Dalat. Perhaps my gods caught a glimmer of your design. Perhaps no more than a hint, triggering an instinctive suspicion that in you, mortal, the crippled god will meet his match." Think about what Talamandus said here. Quick Ben is possibly capable of matching wits with a scheming god that's hundreds of thousands of years old. I know we've seen him playing around with Shadow Throne before, and have yet to see him fail in any of his machinations, so their faith here shouldn't be all that surprising. These Barghast gods haven't known him very long, though, and haven't seen all he's gotten up to, so their vote of confidence is pretty cool.
I agree. I think that's really cool. But are they saying this because they personally, do they just think he is stronger, do you think, than anyone they've ever met? And just like, you know what? Our money's on this fella. I'm curious why they're so into him.
He had an opportunity to enslave Talamandus. He did not do that.
That's true.
He freed him, and then he is helping the Barghast get to their goal.
That's true. I can understand why they'd want to help him. I think that's pretty cool if these Barghast gods are appreciative of him.
Yeah, so I think that was a pretty big vote of confidence.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, he earned their trust that way. And then while he's raving in his sleep, I'm sure there was some additional stuff going on there.
Oh, yeah.
There's probably a matter of convenience here as well, where they have a common enemy.
Yes, and I'm going to bring up something here later on about Quick.
Okay. Quick Ben climbed to his feet and strode to where his leather armor and bridge burner colors waited in a heap near the tent flap. He said, "That's the plan anyway. All right, Talamandus, we've a deal. I admit I was at a loss as to how to proceed without my warrens." He paused, turned to Talamandus once more. He said, "Maybe you can answer me a few questions. Someone else is in this game. Seems to be shaping its own opposition to the Fallen One. Do you know who or what that might be?" Talamandus shrugged and said, "Elder gods, wizard. My Barghast gods conclude their actions have been reactionary by and large." Quick Ben asked, "Reactionary?" Talamandus said, "Aye, a kind of fighting withdrawal. They seem incapable of changing the future, only preparing for it." Quick Ben said, "That's damned fatalistic of them." Talamandus said, "Their perennial flaw, wizard." Quick Ben shrugged himself into his armor. He muttered, "Mind you, it's not really their battle, except for maybe Cruel." Talamandus leapt to the floor and scrambled to stand directly in front of Quick Ben. He asked, "What did you say? Cruel? What do you know of him?" Quick Ben raised an eyebrow and said, "Well, he made the warrens, after all. We swim in his immortal blood, we mages, and everyone else who employs the pathways of sorcery, including the gods. Yours too, I imagine." Talamandus hopped about, twig fingers clutching at the yellowed grass bound to its acorn head. He exclaimed, "No one knows all that! No one! You! How can you— Ah! The web of your infernal brain!" I have a feeling this guy would have been right at home as a priest of Shadow under Shadow Throne. This was such a Pust-esque little tantrum.
It is. And it makes me think that especially any of these high-level magic users in this world, they all got to be kind of crazy to some extent. And I think maybe the uses of certain things, just especially Quick, who seems, he's a little crazy to begin with somehow. And his craziness actually serves him very well.
Yeah, that's true.
I don't know if it's crazy. It's something. I don't know. I'll dabble into this again here in a moment, so I'll dip into that.
Okay. Quick Ben said, Cruel is in worse shape even than Burn, given the nature of the crippled god's assault. So, if I felt helpless, imagine how he must feel. Makes that fatalism a little more understandable, don't you think? And if that's not enough, all the last surviving elder gods have lived under a host of nasty curses for a long, long time. Haven't they? Given the circumstances, who wouldn't be feeling a little fatalistic? Talamandus shouted, Bastard mortal, warp and weft, deadly snare, out with it, damn you! Quick Ben shrugged and said, Your Barghast gods aren't ready to go it alone. Not by throwing all their weight behind me, in any case. Not a chance, Talamandus. They're still babes in the woods. Now, the elder gods have been on the defensive, tried to go it alone, I imagine. Legendary hubris with that lot. But that wasn't working, so they've gone looking for allies. Thus, who was at work refashioning you into something capable of shielding me and the Warrens? Hood, for one, I'd imagine. Layers of death protecting your soul. And your own Barghast gods, of course. Cutting those binding spells that constrain your own power. And Fëanor's thrown you a bone too, or Treach, or whoever's on that particular roost right now. You can hit back if something comes at you. And I'd guess the Queen of Dreams has stepped in, a bridge between you and the sleeping goddess, to turn you into a lone and likely formidable crusader against the poison in her flesh, and in Cruel's veins. So, you're all ready to go, but where? How? And that's where I come in. How am I doing so far, Talamandus? If Quick Ben is right, that's a significant amount of backing from the gods. I wonder how often something comes around where they need to collaborate like this. The chaining of the crippled god?
I'm assuming it definitely takes world-ending type of threats to get anybody, especially that lot. I'm assuming they're mostly a bunch of ego anyhow. I think you got to kind of be pretty ego to get up in that rarefied air of being ascendants. But I'm just curious, like in a multiverse like this, accidental incursions, on mathematically speaking, they have to happen like this sometimes, more than once, wouldn't you think?
Yes.
Okay. So I don't know. I kind of forgot where I'm going with that. And I'm just kind of curious what I don't know. I'm sorry. I kind of lost train of my thought on that one, but so sorry. I got pretty much all I needed out of that though. So.
Well, the topic was the collaborations between them.
Yeah.
So I'm assuming you were kind of leading towards, well, probably anytime one of these cross-stream incursions happens, yes, where like a crippled god type scenario gets into some other reality, whatever gods are in that arena have to band together to deal with it.
Yeah, thank you. That is kind of what I was leaning at. I'm just assuming that crippled god is, I guess, just probably the only one to ever survive said incursion for any length of time if it's happened before. That's just kind of wild to think about. It's got to have happened, and these people have got to have joined up at other times. It's like, dadgummit. This is like, what's the funny part in my mind is kind of like where these books take me. It's like, imagine you've got this world war going on, but as you're going along fighting these groups, it's like all of a sudden you realize y'all kind of got more in common, and y'all kind of stop fighting. Y'all join up, and we've got three groups that have decided to join up. It's so bad to move on to the really bad.
It's the nature of humanity, man. We're tribal until there's a greater threat outside of that.
I know it. I love how that's worked in this series. It's just been fantastic.
Talamandus growled, We are relying upon you, Ben Adafon Dalat. Quick Ben asked, To do what? Talamandus shrieked, Whatever it is you're planning to do, and it had better work.
No pressure.
Yeah, no pressure. After a long moment, Quick Ben grinned down at the creature, but said nothing. Talamandus scrambled after Quick Ben when he left the tent. The mage paused to look around. It was late afternoon, the sky clear overhead. A Barghast encampment was sprawled out on all sides. The mud-churned pathways crisscrossing the encampment were crowded with warriors, many wounded or bearing fallen kin. Quick Ben asked, Where, Talamandus, are my fellow bridge-burners? Talamandus said, First into Capustan, wizard, and still there. At the Thrall, likely. Quick Ben asked, Did they get into any fighting? Talamandus said, Only at the north gate, breaking through the siege line. Swiftly done. There are none wounded, Ben Adafon Dalat. Making your tribe unique, yes? Quick Ben murmured, So I see, watching the warriors filing into the camp. He went on, Not much dueling of late, I take it. Talamandus grunted, then said, True enough. Our gods have spoken to our shamans, who have in turn conveyed to the clan warriors a chastisement. It would appear that the white face are not yet done with these panions, or with your war, wizard. Quick Ben glanced down and said, You'll be marching south with us, Talamandus? Talamandus said, We shall. It is not enough blunting the sword. We must sever the hand wielding it. Quick Ben said, I need to contact my allies, in the army to the west. Should I attempt a warren? Talamandus said, I am ready. Quick Ben said, Good. Let's find somewhere private. The gods that have woken up, they are not too happy about all this dueling going on.
I think that's kind of funny. It's like, dude, stop all that crap.
Yeah, all your best warriors are killing each other.
Yeah, dude, you've lost 120 of your best guys Now it's down to your lower end class guys. I mean, dude, come on.
Yes.
It's like the Segula wearing. Could you imagine the Segula wearing himself out like this on the road to a big battle?
Oh.
It's like, well, he just lost number 3. It's like crap. It's
21's still there, though.
3, what's he like? It's like, yeah, 21's still there. but forever 21. But, you know, hey.
It kind of makes you wonder if 20 dies, if 22 just jumps in front.
No. Number 21, forever 21, that guy has got to have like dumb luck. It means a bunch of people have got to have died accidentally on the way to duel him, or while they're dueling him, have fallen on their own sword, accidentally tripped on their shoelaces or something. I don't know, but it's like you know what I'm talking about. It's got that. It's got that Final Destination kind of dumb luck working for him. That's what keeps you at forever 21.
Yeah. 2 leagues to the west of Kapustan, in the shadows edging down a broad slope, the massed ranks of Malazan heavy infantry locked shields and advanced. Marines armed with crossbows ranged ahead, firing quarrels in the milling line of Bedeklites less than 30 paces distant. Whiskey Jack watched through the slits of his helm's visor from where he had reined in at the hill's crest, his horse tossing its head at the smell of blood. Aides and messengers gathered around him. Dujek's flank attack on the Septarch's regiment of archers had virtually eliminated the arrows from the valley side opposite. Whiskey Jack's heavy infantry had drawn their fire, which had provided One Arm's heavy cavalry the time needed to mount a charge along the north slope. Had the Panyan archers the discipline and competent commanders, they would have had time to wheel in formation and loose at least 3 flights into the charging cavalry, perhaps sufficient to beat off the attack. Instead, they had milled in confusion upon seeing the horse warriors closing on their right flank, then had disintegrated into a rout. Pursuit and wholesale slaughter followed. The Marines slipped back through the aisles in the advancing heavy infantry. They would reappear on each wing, resuming their crossbow fire against the enemy line's edges. Before then, however, 4,000 silent, scale-armored, and shield-bearing veterans closed with the Bedeklites. Javelins preceded their charge when but a dozen paces remained, the long-headed barbed spears cutting into the Panyan line, a tactic peculiar to One Arm's host. Then thrusting swords snapped from scabbards, and the Malazans surged forward. The Bedeklite line crumpled. Whiskey Jack's heavy infantry reformed into individual 4-squad wedges, each one independently driving deeper into the Panyan ranks once the battle was fully joined. The details before Whiskey Jack were precise in following the Malazan doctrine of set battles, as devised by Dasim Ultor.
Dasim Ultor. It's been a while.
It's been a while. It's been too long. Shield lock lines and squares worked best in defending engagements. When delivering chaos into massed enemy ranks in an assault, however, it was found that smaller, tighter units worked best. A successful advance that drove the enemy back often lost its momentum and, indeed, its contact with the retreating foes, amidst a corpse-cluttered ground and the need to maintain closed ranks. Almost 1,000 4-squad wedges, of 35 to 40 soldiers each, on the other hand, actually delayed the moment of rout. Flight was more difficult, communication problematic, and lines of sight to fellow soldiers often broken. None knew what the others were doing, and in the face of that uncertainty, they often hesitated before fleeing, a fatal option. There was another choice, of course, and that was to fight. But it took a very special army to be capable of maintaining such discipline and adaptability in those circumstances. And in those instances, the Malazan forces would hold their shield-locked formation. These Bedeklites possessed none of these qualities. Within 50 heartbeats, the division was shattered. Entire companies, finding themselves surrounded by the silent, deadly Malazans, flung their weapons down. This part of the battle, Whiskey Jack concluded, was finished. 50 heartbeats. What a joke this army turned out to be. All they had going for them were overwhelming their foe.
They had that, and they also that aura of fear, that also kind of seemed to help sap up and make people freak out and flee and help weaken it, so it was kind of weird that they were beat down so quick.
Yeah, very disappointing.
Yeah. Is this the quickest battle so far in the Malazan universe, 50 heartbeats? Thanks to the wonderful Malazan military? Dude, get out of town, dude. That's fantastic.
I'm trying to remember if there's been quicker engagements of this size. I don't think so.
I don't believe so.
Yeah. A Saltoan messenger rode up to Whiskey Jack's side and said, "Sir, word from the warlord." Whiskey Jack nodded. The messenger proceeded. "The Ilgress Bargas and the Revi skirmishers have broken the Seerdaman and Erdoman. There was a mage cadre active in the engagement, at least at the start, but the Tistandi nullified them. Brood owns the field on the south flank." There's your mage cadre. I wonder what they were up to during the siege.
Getting nullified.
Before they were nullified, sir.
I'm sure they had a lot to do with that sorcerer's enfilade. I mean, we didn't see sorcerer's enfilade. I say that we saw fireballs and stuff, but I just assumed that to be mundane in Kapistan, but it would have been outside elsewhere because it didn't appear to be sorceress in Kapistan. It was just overwhelming numbers.
Yeah, you're right. All that siege stuff was just catapults and trebuchets throwing in the fireballs.
Yeah.
The mages, they had that one estate with Boshlane and Korbal approach that never fell. They had
That's right.
They threw a ton of stuff at it, and I guess they just decided not to worry about it. I'm curious if they were at the Thrall trying to get through that sorceress barrier. Maybe they're all concentrating on that. Because they probably, one of their goals was to get rid of that masked council.
I'm assuming that. I'm assuming that the Panyan Seer was telling them they better get that done or they're going to be dinner.
Mm-hmm. Whiskey Jack grunted and said, "Very good. Anything else?" The messenger said, "Sir, a well-aimed slingstone from a Reeve gave Septarch Kulpath a third eye, killed the bastard outright. We are in possession of his army's standard, sir." Whiskey Jack said, "Inform the warlord that the Bedeklites, Beklites, Skalandi, and Desandi companies have been defeated. We command the center and north. Inquire of the warlord as to our next move. My scouts inform me that upwards of 200,000 Tenniscauri are encamped half a league to the east, rather mauled by all accounts, yet potentially a nuisance. At the same time, and on this Dujek and I are agreed, an unmitigated slaughter of these peasants would not sit well with us." The messenger said, "I will convey your words, Commander," then saluted, swung his horse round, and rode southward. A slash of darkness opened before Whiskey Jack, startling his horse. Snorting, stamping, the beast came close to rearing until a low growl from Whiskey Jack calmed it. Corlat emerged from her warren. Her black armor glittered with blood spray, but he saw no obvious wounds. He asked, "Are you injured?" She shook her head and said, "A hapless Panyan warlock. Whiskey Jack, I need you to come with me. Are you done here?" He grimaced, ever loath to leave a battle, even one drawing to a quick, satisfying conclusion. He said, "I'll assume it's important enough to have you risk your warren, so the answer is yes. Do we go far?" Corlat said, "To Dujak's command tent." Whiskey Jack asked, "He's taken wounds?" Corlat cracked a smile and said, "No, all is well, you old warrior. How long would you have me wait?" He growled, "Well enough," and turned to an officer sitting on a roan destrier nearby, then said, "Barak, you're in charge here." The young man's eyes widened. He said, "Sir, I'm a captain." Whiskey Jack said, "So here's your chance. Besides, I'm a sergeant. At least I would be if I was still drawing coin on the Empress's pay lists. Besides, again, you're the only officer present who doesn't have his or her own company to worry about." Barak said, "But sir, I am Dujak's liaison to the Black Maranth." Whiskey Jack asked, "And are they here?" Barak said, No, sir." Whiskey Jack said, "So, enough jawing and make sure things get wrapped up here, Barak." Barak said, "Yes, sir." Whiskey Jack dismounted and handed the reins of his charger to an aide, then joined Corlat. He resisted an urge to draw her into his arms, and was disconcerted to see a glimmer of prescient knowledge in her eyes. She murmured, "Not in front of the troops, surely." He growled, "Lead me through, woman." This exchange with Barak really cracked me up. Whiskey Jack wouldn't be asking him to take over if, number one, he didn't think he was capable of doing the job, and number two, he didn't think he needed to be doing anything more important at that time.
I agree, but it is a pretty normal response for most folks.
Yeah, and in that scenario, when asked to step up by your superior, you do it. You embrace the challenge and do the best you can. Looking for excuses to get out of it or questioning the commander's decision can only make you look bad and erode their confidence in you.
I agree. Or you could just be like me and argue with them, but how pointless it all is, using charts and diagrams. Get them to agree with you that it is pointless and then acquiesce and do it anyway just to aggravate them.
Not the best course of action, sir.
No, sir. Sorry, that's the parent side of me there.
Yeah. Whiskey Jack had traveled a warren only a few times, but his memories of those fraught journeys did little to prepare him for Cruald Ghislaine. Taking him by the hand, Corlat drew him into the ancient realm of Mother Dark, and though he could feel the sure grip of her fingers, he stepped into blindness. This is exciting. We get to see what it's like in Cruald Ghislaine for the first time. There was no light.
Right.
And I guess I should have guessed that we wouldn't be able to see anything in this warren, at least from a human perspective.
Right. Right. Yeah, but the weird one is that, I'm sorry, did you talk about the temperature? Oh, no, it's going to talk about the temperature here in a second. That was what's weird. I expected it to be cold.
Yeah, I think there's some sorceress air conditioning going on.
Maybe so.
Gritty flagstones under his boots, the air perfectly motionless, scentless, with an ambient temperature that seemed no different from that of his skin. So to your point, that's pretty balmy.
Yeah. Yeah, that'd be very balmy. And I've always been under the impression that...
Motionless?
Yeah.
The Imperial Warren has, they say, that what's that? It's like an ash smell. But it's not like, it's just a weird smell, but it's still kind of scentless. It just sticks to you. But
that balminess of it, for some reason, I was under the impression, at least by being inside of Dragnapur, that the Warren or the source of that was really cold.
That's a really interesting point. The reason you're thinking that is because Perrin did feel waves of cold coming off of it when he got near it. I do remember that.
Yes.
So this could be one of those scenarios where it's a little inconsistent between the two.
Could be. Or maybe it's just a bonus. Maybe when you travel it, if you're a guest, maybe it just seems that way to you.
I don't know. It's weird that the gate would be so cold. Bitter, radiating cold. And then when you're in it, it's 98.6 degrees.
98.6 degrees. Yeah, exactly. Wait a minute.
He was pulled forward, his boots seeming to barely touch the floor. A sudden streak of gray assaulted his eyes, and he heard Corlat hiss. "We are assailed even here. The crippled god's poison seeps deep, Whiskey Jack. This does not bode well." He cleared his throat and said, "No doubt Animander Rake has recognized the threat, and if so, do you know what he plans to do about it?" Corlat said, "One thing at a time, dear lover. He is the Knight of Darkness, the Sun, Mother Dark's own champion, not one to shy from a confrontation." He said, "I'd never have guessed." "What's he waiting for, then?" Corlat said, "We're a patient people, us Tistandi. The true measure of power lies in the wisdom to wait for the propitious moment. When it comes, and he judges it to be so, then Animander Rake will respond." Whiskey Jack said, "Presumably the same holds for unleashing Moonspawn on the Panyan Daman." Corlat said, "Aye." Whiskey Jack thought, and somehow Rake's managed to hide a floating fortress the size of a mountain. He said, "You've considerable faith in your lord, haven't you?" He felt her shrug through the hand clasped in his. She said, "There is sufficient precedent to disregard notions of faith when it comes to my lord. I am comforted by certainty." Whiskey Jack said, "Glad to hear it. And are you comfortable with me, Corlat?" Corlat said, "Devious man, the answer to every facet of that question is yes. Would you now have me ask in kind?" He said, "You shouldn't have to." Corlat said, "Tistandi are human. When it comes to males, they're all the same. Perhaps I shall force the words from you nonetheless." Whiskey Jack said, "You won't have to work hard. My answer is the same as yours." Corlat said, "Which is?" Whiskey Jack said, "Why, the very word you used, of course." He grunted at the jab in his ribs. She said, "Enough of that. We've arrived." I really laughed at this because my wife and I had a conversation this last week very similar to this before I read this. It was hilarious.
That's great, dude. That's nice. And I like that little interaction between them too. It's nice to get a little not humor, just a little sweetness.
Yeah, I thought it was funny because he's obviously being cagey with her just to get a rise out of her. The portal opened to painful light, the interior of Dujak's command tent, shrouded in the gloom of late afternoon. They stepped within, the warren closing silently behind them. Whiskey Jack said, "If all this was just to get me alone," Corlat exclaimed, "Gods, the ego!" She gestured with her free hand and a ghostly figure took form in front of Whiskey Jack, a familiar face that smiled. The apparition eyed them and said, "What a charming sight. Hood knows, I can't recall the last time I had a woman." Whiskey Jack disengaged his hand from Corlat's and growled, "Watch your tongue, Quick Ben. It's been a while, and you look terrible." That's a little rude from Quick Ben. I guess he doesn't have a filter talking like this in front of a lady. He sure put his foot in his mouth there.
I love Quick Ben. I'm just going to say what's on his mind. And this kind of makes me wonder for some reason. I don't know why. This just struck me earlier. But in a weird way, from what we know about Quick, he's kind of an amalgam, not unlike Silver Fox, right?
Mm-hmm.
So how old is Quick Ben?
I don't know how that works.
Does he not have a filter because of maybe, is it like, does someone have to rise to the front and be in charge? Like, dude, watch. Is there a conversation going inside? Like, I'm up at the front. I'm at the mic. I'm on the microphone now. Is it, or is it a unified effort? What's...
Yeah, I'm curious how that works.
But I love the fact that he may not be that old. That's kind of what I was getting at in a certain aspect. But his interactions, he's always hanging around this group of degenerates that we love that just love to insult people. So maybe he just doesn't have any other right way to speak. Just be one of them, Speak your mind,
It's funny to me, though, because he has female souls in him.
Yeah.
Because wasn't the first one he absorbed was some record keeper researcher lady?
Yeah.
She was female? Yeah.
Yeah, you're right. I think she was. I know that's where a big chunk of his, I'm assuming where a large chunk of his knowledge comes from, because she was a record keeper. So it's like, there's the brains of the bunch.
Yeah.
He's got like the super friends in there, but it's all like inside one person's head.
Mm-hmm. Quick Ben said, "Why, thanks a whole lot, Commander. I'll have you know I feel even worse. But I can traverse my warrens now, more or less shielded from the Fallen One's poison. I bring news from Kapustan. Do you want it or not?" Whiskey Jack grinned and said, "Go ahead." Quick Ben said, "The White Phases hold the city." Whiskey Jack said, "We'd guessed as much. Once Twist delivered the news of your success with the Barghast, and once the Penyon army stumbled into our laps." Quick Ben said, "Fine. Well, assuming you've taken care of that army, I'll add just one more thing. The Barghast are marching with us, south. If you and Dujek found things tense dealing with Brood and Calor and company, you're pardoned, Corlat. Now you've got Humbrol Tar to deal with as well." Whiskey Jack grunted at that. He asked, "What's he like then?" Quick Ben said, "Too clever by half, but at least he's united the clans, and he's clear-eyed on the mess he's heading into." Whiskey Jack said, "I'm glad one of us is. How fare Perrin and the Bridge Burners?" Quick Ben said, "Reportedly fine, though I haven't seen them in a while. They are at the thrall with Humbrol Tar and the survivors of the city's defenders." Whiskey Jack's brows rose. He said, "There are survivors?" Quick Ben said, "Aye, so it seems. Non-combatants still cowering in the tunnels, and some grey swords. Hard to believe, isn't it? Mind you, I doubt there's much fight left in them. From what I've heard about Kapustan's streets..." Quick Ben shook his head, then said, "You have to see it to believe it. So will I, in fact, which is what I'm about to do. With your leave, that is." Whiskey Jack said, "With caution, I trust." Quick Ben smiled and said, "No one will see me unless I want them to, sir. When do you anticipate reaching Kapustan?" Whiskey Jack shrugged. He said, "We've the Teniscauri to deal with. That could get complicated." Quick Ben's dark eyes narrowed. He said, "You're not intending to parley with them, are you?" Whiskey Jack said, "Why not? Better than slaughter, wizard." Quick Ben said, "Whiskey Jack, the Barghast are returning with stories of what happened in Kapustan, of what the Teniscauri did to the defenders. They have a leader, those Teniscauri, a man named Anaster, the first child of the Dead Seed. The latest rumor is he personally skinned Prince Jelarkan, then served him up as the main course of a banquet in the prince's own throne room." The breath hissed from Corlat. Grimacing, Whiskey Jack said, "If such crimes can be laid with certainty at the feet of this Anaster, or of any Teniscauri, then Malazan military law will prevail." Quick Ben said, "Simple execution grants them a mercy not accorded their victims." Whiskey Jack said, "Then they will be fortunate that One Arm's host captured them, and none other." Quick Ben still looked troubled. He said, "And Kapustan's surviving citizens, the defenders and the priests of the thrall, will they have no say in the disposition of the prisoners? Sir, troubled times might await us." Whiskey Jack said, "Thank you for the warning, wizard." After a moment, Quick Ben shrugged, then sighed. He said, "See you in Kapustan, Whiskey Jack." Whiskey Jack said, "Aye." The apparition faded. Corlat turned to Whiskey Jack and said, "Malazan military law." He raised his brows, then said, "My sense of Caladan Brood is that he's not the vengeful type. Do you anticipate a clash?" Corlat said, "I know what Calor will advise." A hint of tension was present in her tone. Whiskey Jack said, "So do I, but I don't think the warlord's inclined to listen. Hood knows he hasn't thus far." Corlat said, "We have not yet seen Kapustan." Whiskey Jack released a long breath and drew off his gauntlets. He said, "Horrors to answer in kind." Corlat said, "An unwritten law, an ancient law." Whiskey Jack growled, "I don't hold to it. We become no better, then. Even simple execution." He faced her and said, "Over 200,000 starving peasants. Will they stand about like sheep? Not likely. As prisoners, we couldn't feed them if we tried, nor have we sufficient soldiers to spare guarding them." Corlat's eyes were slowly widening. She said, "You are proposing we leave them, aren't you?" Whiskey Jack thought, "She's leading up to something here. I've caught glimmers before, the whisper of a hidden wedge poised to drive itself between us." This could be a pretty serious ideological divide, and one so big that to differ in opinion really changes the view of the other party in a major way.
Oh, absolutely. I agree wholeheartedly.
And this also really mirrors the internal conflict I have with how I feel about Ikovian's punishment for Wrath Feiner. I have both sides of this in me, where initially I want maximum punishment, but then there's the other voice that tells me that we have to do better than our enemies.
And again, I agree. Like you with the Wrath Feiner situation, I wanted to see that feller punished.
But the way he was punished was pretty brutal. Just a simple execution, hey, that'd have been fine,
Off with his block, something like that, But, that was a little too much. So, yeah, we do have to be better than our... Then we have to be better. But I do agree but we need justice though too. So there has to be some kind of middle ground, I guess. We can get some justice and some mercy.
Yeah, well, Bruchalion and them, they didn't get a simple execution.
No.
I guess it depends on what your definition of justice is.
Well, this is true. These people are talking about being merciful in the side of what's going on, despite what's going on. Especially with Brood's group and all this. They've been fighting forever. I think there comes a point where these people are like, dude, let's just stop fighting for a moment. We got a lot more fighting to get to. Can't we just take a minute and just stop killing everybody and killing everything? Take for just a minute.
Let's pause, and we'll come back to this after this next section here.
Okay.
Whiskey Jack said, not all of them. We'll take their leaders, the Sinaster and his officers, assuming there are any. If the Teniscari walked a path of atrocity, then the first child led the way. He shook his head, then continued, but the real criminal awaits us within the Daemon itself. The seer, who would starve his followers into cannibalism, into madness, who would destroy his own people. We'd be executing the victims, his victims. Picking up the conversation, you and I had come to this exact same conclusion 2-3 chapters ago.
Yeah.
Where the Teniscari, as abhorrent as their actions are, they are truly victims in this scenario to be driven to this point.
Yeah, agreed. Yeah, great minds, dude. I mean, you think
So yeah, just outright executing all of them doesn't make sense. Doesn't sit right with me.
No, it is unacceptable.
Now, Rathvaner, on the other hand, I'm still...
Sure. Oh boy, may have to. We need some justice.
Corlat frowned. She said, by that token, we should absolve the Panyan armies as well, Whiskey Jack. Whiskey Jack's gray eyes hardened. He said, our enemy is the seer. Dujek and I agree on this. We're not here to annihilate a nation. The armies that impede our march to the seer, we will deal with. Efficiently. Retribution and revenge are distractions.
I actually have that highlighted. Retribution and revenge are distractions.
I think we've also discussed this before at some point way earlier.
This is very resemblant of World War II and a certain naughty German and his followers, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
We actually had that discussion a couple episodes ago as well, where it had that feel within the military.
Okay, that's what I was thinking.
Yes, where not everybody probably feels that way, but they're kind of swept along.
Yeah.
They're probably afraid to speak out.
It can be dangerous.
Question for you. Okay. Retribution and revenge are distractions. Is there something about that stuck out to you that was why you highlighted that? I'm curious if it was important to you in some way or like what.
Well, it's funny. I can't at the moment recall because that would have been highlighted 7 to 8 years ago on my first read through, especially from their point of view when they're just, the way that I look at that here on this is the fact that when you're trying to achieve this goal of we're trying to take out the Panyan Seer, trying to kill all these people, getting retribution and revenge, they are distractions. They're distractions from what our goal is to get the Panyan Seer. And they may divide. Apparently, this could divide the whole union of these powerful forces that, the Malazans, Brood, and Rake. At least what Whiskey Jack's fear is and how they're painting this picture is this could dissolve this union of somehow.
Yeah. If they get into a big enough fight over how to handle this situation, absolutely.
Yeah. It could lead to a splintering of it, yeah.
It's like one of those scenarios where you have an ideological divide with someone that you're getting married to. And It's so severe that you, well, hopefully you find out before you get married, but there's some topics you probably should talk about before you get married. You don't want to find about afterwards. Yeah, I was thinking religion, children, where you want to live, how you want to live, all that stuff.
Yeah, agreed.
Corlat said, and what of liberation, the conquered cities? Whiskey Jack cut in, incidental, Corlat. I'm surprised at your confusion on this. Brood saw it the same as we did at that first parley when tactics were discussed. We strike for the heart. Corlat said, I believe you misunderstood, Whiskey Jack. For over a decade, the warlord has been waging a war of liberation from the rapacious hunger of your Malazan Empire. Caladan Brood has now shifted his focus, a new enemy, but the same war. Brood is here to free the Panyans. Whiskey Jack exclaimed, Hood's breath! You can't free a people from themselves! Corlat said, he seeks to free them from the seer's rule. Whiskey Jack asked, and who exalted the seer to his present status? Corlat said, yet you speak of absolving the commonality, even the soldiers of the Panyan armies, Whiskey Jack, and that is what is confusing me. He thought, not entirely. Whiskey Jack said, we speak at cross purposes here, Corlat. Neither I nor Dujek will willingly assume the role of judge and executioner, should we prove victorious. Nor are we here to put the pieces back together for the Panyans. That's for them to do. That responsibility will turn us into administrators, and to effectively administrate, we must occupy. She barked a harsh laugh and said, and is that not the Malazan way, Whiskey Jack? Whiskey Jack exclaimed, this is not a Malazan war! Corlat asked, isn't it? Are you sure? He studied her through slitted eyes and said, what do you mean? We're outlawed, woman. One arm's host is... He fell silent, seeing a flatness come to Corlat's gaze, then realized, too late, that he had just failed a test, and with that failure had ended the trust that had grown between them. He thought, damn, I walked right into it. Wide-eyed stupid. She smiled then, and it was a smile of pain and regret. She said, Dujek approaches. You might as well await him here. Corlat turned and strode from the tent. Whiskey Jack stared after her then, when she'd left. He'd flung his gauntlets on the map table and sat down on Dujak's cot. He thought, should I have told you, Corlat, the truth? That we've got a knife at our throats, and the hand holding it on Empress Lysine's behalf is right here in this very camp, and has been ever since the beginning? Who could that be?
I think I know.
Guess we'll find out.
Yep.
He heard a horse thump to a halt outside the tent. A few moments later, Dujak One-Arm entered, his armor sheathed in dust. He said, wondered where you'd got to. Whiskey Jack cut in, Brood knows, his voice low and raw. Dujak paused but a moment. He asked, he does he? What precisely has he worked out? Whiskey Jack said, that we're not quite as outlawed as we've made out to be. Dujak asked, any further? Whiskey Jack said, isn't that enough, Dujak? Dujak strode over to the side table where awaited a jug of ale. He unstoppered it and poured 2 tankers full, then said, there are mitigating circumstances. Whiskey Jack said, relevant only to us, you and I. Dujak cut in our army. Whiskey Jack said, who believe their lives are forfeit in the Empire, Dujak, made into victims once again. No, it's you and I and no one else this time. Dujak drained his tankard, refilled it in silence. Then he said, are you suggesting we spread our hand on the table for Brood and Corlat, in the hopes that they'll do something about our predicament? Whiskey Jack said, I don't know. Not if we're hoping for absolution for having maintained this deceit all this time. That would be a motive that wouldn't sit well with me, even if patently untrue. Appearances, Dujak cut in, will make it seem precisely that, we've been lying to you from the very beginning to save our own necks. But now that you know, we'll tell you. Gods, that's insulting even to me, and I'm the one saying it. All right, the Alliance is in trouble. A thud against the tent flap preceded the arrival of Artanthos, who said, your pardons, sirs. His flat eyes studying the 2 soldiers in turn before he continued. Brood has called for a council. Whiskey Jack thought, Standard Bearer, your timing is impeccable. Interesting.
Curiouser and curiouser.
What do you mean by that, Whiskey Jack? Whiskey Jack collected the tankard awaiting him and drained it, then turned to Dujak and nodded. Dujak sighed, then said, lead the way, Artanthos. We're right behind you. Let me gather my wits here for this section.
For the sprint home.
Oh. We're running a marathon, and we're in the final third. The encampment seemed extraordinarily quiet. The Maib had not realized how comforting the army's presence had been on the march. Now only elders and children and a few hundred rearguard Malazan soldiers remained. She had no idea how the battle fared. Either way, deaths would make themselves felt. Mourning among the Revi and Barghast, bereft voices rising into the darkness. She thought, victory is an illusion in all things. She fled in her dreams every night. Fled and was, eventually, caught, only to awaken. Sudden, as if torn away, her withered body shivering, aches filling her joints. An escape of sorts, yet in truth she left one nightmare for another. She thought, an illusion in all things. The wagon bed had become her entire world, a kind of mock sanctuary that reappeared each and every time sleep ended. To either side of her ran wooden slats. Their patterns of grain and knots had become intimate knowledge. But there would be no end, not for her. They were keeping it away, playing out their own delusions of mercy and compassion. The Daru who fed her, the Revi woman who cleaned and bathed her and combed the wispy remnants of her hair, gestures of malice, playing out, over and over, scenes of torture. The Revi woman sat above her now, steadily pulling the horn comb through the Maib's hair, humming a child's song. A woman the Maib remembered from her other life. Old, she had seemed back then. A hapless woman who had been kicked in the head by a veteran, and so lived in a simple world. She thought, I'd thought it simple, but that was just one more illusion. No, she lives amidst unknowns, amidst things she cannot comprehend. It is a world of terror. She sings to fend off the fear born of her own ignorance, given tasks to keep her busy. Before I had come along for her, this woman had helped prepare corpses. After all, the spirits worked through such childlike adults. Through her, the spirits could come close to the fallen, and so comfort them and guide them into the world of the ancestors. It could be nothing other than malice, the Maib concluded, to have set this woman upon her. Possibly she was not even aware that the subject of her attentions was still alive. The woman met no one's eyes, ever. Recognition had fled with the kick of a veteran's hoof. The comb dragged back and forth, back and forth. The humming continued its ceaseless round. She thought, spirits below, I would rather even your terror of the unknown, rather that than the knowledge of my daughter's betrayal, the wolves she has set upon me, to pursue me in my dreams. The wolves which are her hunger, the hunger which has already devoured my youth and now seeks yet more, as if anything's left. Am I to be naught but food for my daughter's burgeoning life? A final meal, a mother reduced to nothing more than sustenance? Ah, Silver Fox, are you every daughter? Am I every mother? There have been no rituals severing our lives. We have forgotten the meaning behind the Reedy ways, the true reasons for those rituals. I ever yield, and you suckle in ceaseless demand. And so we are trapped, pulled deeper and deeper, you and I. To carry a child is to age in one's bones, to weary one's blood, to stretch skin and flesh. Birthing splits a woman in two, the division a thing of raw agony, splitting young from old, and the child needs and the mother gives. I have never weaned you, Silver Fox. Indeed, you have never left my womb. You, daughter, draw far more than just milk. Spirits, please grant me surcease. This cruel parody of motherhood is too much to bear. Sever me from my daughter, for her sake. My milk is become poison. I can feed naught but spite, for there is nothing else within me, and I remain a young woman in this aged body. The comb caught on a snarl, tugging her head back. The Mybe hissed in pain, shot a glare up at the woman above her. Her heart suddenly lurched. Their gazes were locked. The woman who looked at no one was looking at her. She thought, I, a young woman in an old woman's body. She, a child in a woman's body. Two prisons in perfect reflection. Eyes locked. Made it, Billy.
Yes, you did. Good job. Good job, sir. I'm proud of you.
Thank you.
Give you a little round of applause there.
Elsewhere, Krupp said, Dear lass, you look weary. Settle here with magnanimous Krupp, and he will pour you some of his steaming herbal brew.
You know, it's one of those situations where it's like, dude, thank you for introducing me to a new sensational Krupp, for introducing me to being genuinely pleased to see you, Krupp. Thank you.
Is this a new feeling? I'm excited to
jump
to a conversation with Krupp.
I usually like Krupp, but it's like, to get past her, anything's exciting, dude. It's like, please. As long as, as long as Ken OS whining about his ulcer, I'm sorry.
You know what I probably sound like to our listeners? I probably sound like her, because I'm like, just let it end. Free me.
You know what it's like. You've resonated.
I apologize,
Mr.
everyone.
Erickson,
I need to stop complaining.
Mr. Erickson.
Yes, he succeeded.
No, Mr. Erickson has succeeded. He's turned us both into the Bible. And we now know what it's like, and he's done a good job of being a good writer, sir. Thank you.
Now I don't know how I feel about you anymore.
Oh, man. Silver Fox said, I will, thank you. Krupp smiled, watching Silver Fox slowly lower herself onto the ground and lean back against the spare saddle, the small hearth between them. She asked, So where are your friends? Krupp said, Gambling, with the crew of the Trigal Trade Guild. Krupp, for some odd reason, has been barred from such games. An outrage. He handed her a tin cup, then said, Mostly sage, alas. If you've a cough. Silver Fox said, I haven't, but it's welcome anyway. Krupp said, Krupp, of course, never coughs. Silver Fox asked, And why is that? Krupp said, Why, because he drinks sage tea. Her brown eyes slipped past his and settled on the wagon a dozen paces away. She asked, How does she fare? Krupp's brows lifted. He said, You might ask her, lass. Silver Fox said, I can't. I can be nothing other than an abomination for my mother, her stolen youth in the flesh. She despises me, with good reason, especially now that Corlat's told her about my Talan A. Krupp said, Krupp wonders, do you now doubt the journey undertaken? Silver Fox shook her head, sipped at the tea. She said, It's too late for that. The problem persists, as you well know. Besides, our journey is done. Only hers remains. Krupp murmured, You dissemble. Your journey is anything but done, Silver Fox. But let us leave that subject for the moment, yes? Have you gleaned news of the dreadful battle? Silver Fox said, It's over. The Panya forces are no more, barring a couple of 100,000 poorly armed peasants. The white faces have liberated Kapustan, what's left of it, that is. The bridge burners are already in the city. More pressing, Brood has called a council. You might be interested in attending that. Krupp said, Indeed, if only to bless the gathering with Krupp's awesome wisdom. What of you? Are you not also attending? Silver Fox smiled. She said, As you said earlier, Daru, my journey's not quite over. Krupp said, Ah, yes. Krupp wishes you well in that, lass, and dearly hopes he will see you again soon. Silver Fox's eyes glanced once more at the wagon. She said, You will, friend, then drained her tea and rose with a soft sigh. Krupp saw her hesitate. He asked, Lass, is something wrong? Her expression was troubled. She said, I'm not sure. A part of me desires to accompany you to that council. A sudden urge, in fact. Krupp's small eyes narrowed. He said, A part of you, Silver Fox? Silver Fox said, Aye, inviting the question, Which part? Whose soul within me now twitches with suspicion? Who senses that sparks are about to fly in this alliance of ours? Gods, even worse, it's as if I know precisely why, but I don't. Krupp said, Tattersail doesn't, yes? leaving Nightchill and Bellerdan as potential candidates possessing prescient knowledge fraught with dire motivation. Perhaps that can be said a simpler way. Silverfox said, never mind, Krupp. Krupp said, you are torn, Silverfox, to put it bluntly. Consider this. Will a minor delay in seeking your destiny unduly affect its outcome? Can you, in other words, spare the time to come with me to the Warlord's command tent? She studied him and said, you have a hunch as well, don't you? Krupp said, if a rift is imminent, lass, then your personage could prove essential, for you are the bridge indeed between these formidable camps. Silverfox said, I don't trust Nightchill, Krupp. Krupp said, most mortals occasionally fail in trusting parts of themselves. Excepting Krupp, of course, whose well-earned confidence is absolute. In any case, conflicting instincts are woven in our natures. Excepting Krupp of... Silverfox interrupted, yes, all right, let's go. All right, we are going to stop there, and we will pick up the chapter next week. This is going to be a 4-parter.
I figured it's pretty long.
And each of those parts are going to be pretty big, too. So this is a long chapter, possibly one of the longest that we've encountered so far in all the books.
I think it is.
For standout moments, the Barghast gods willing to help Quick Ben fight back against the crippled god.
That's pretty cool, dude. It's pretty real cool.
Yeah, what that says about their confidence in him and their trust of him, it's a lot.
Yeah, it's a big deal. We've always loved Quick, but this is like right on, dude. Getting the recognition.
Mm-hmm.
Dude, way to go.
Talamandus freaking out about the way Quick Ben's mind works. That little tantrum really cracked me up.
I love that even what it takes to be masters of the Warrens are intrigued by Quick Ben's thinking. He's just so alien to them, apparently. It's like, what? I thought he's one of you. It's like, no, he's not. He's apparently just so out there. They just don't even know what's going on with that fella.
It's like when you're talking to somebody that's really, really intelligent and you're having a lot of trouble following what they're saying because they're thinking so far ahead of you that they haven't caught you up as they're talking.
Oh, yeah. With the joke, most of us are playing checkers. This guy's playing 5D chess.
Yeah, exactly. The Malazans making such quick work of the Panyan forces. I mean, 50 heartbeats. Come on now.
Professionals, baby. That's the Malazans. Those guys are awesome. It's that professionalism.
Yeah, that's pretty wild. Corlett and Whiskey Jack's back and forth while in the Warren, and Whiskey Jack refusing to voice how he felt about her verbally. I really thought that was funny.
It's just kind of core for me, and I always dislike the soap opera stuff, the he said, she said, even though I like the two people. Sometimes I like it, sometimes it makes them warm and more real. And that's why I get frustrated sometimes. Because sometimes I get frustrated due to other things going on, like the Maib or other things in a chapter.
Mm-hmm. And then finally, Brood's camp finding out that the Malazans are not truly outlawed.
This could be a big deal. This could be a really bad deal.
Could blow up in their face.
We'll have to kind of wait and see, I guess.
All right, great job tonight, Billy.
Hey, man, great episode, dude.
You got any final thoughts before we drop off here?
I just really enjoy this wrapping up and getting ready for the next phase of business. I'm really looking forward to this next couple weeks as we go through this chapter, because this chapter here has some really super core stuff and also just a lot of really important information that answers a lot of past questions, I feel.
I agree. Got some really important stuff coming up in the next section, for sure.
Really excited about it, dude.
Yeah. All right, thanks, everybody. We'll see you next week.
We'll see y'all next week.
We thank you all for joining us today.
Again, we really like to thank you for taking the time to be with us, and we've had a really great time talking about the topic today.
If you would like to support our show, you can find us at horsefrogproductions.com, where you can find our Patreon link. Depending on the platform you're listening from, it may also be in the episode description.
And if you'd like to contact us through email, it's at contact@horsefrogproductions.com.